Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Work of Design Live with Keith Granet. Today's webinar will focus on managing your business during uncertain times. Here are the details of today's agenda. At the end, Keith will also briefly discuss Studio Designer's forthcoming fee and salary report. Also at the end, Keith will be answering audience questions, so feel free to submit your questions in the control panel anytime, and he will get to as many questions as possible. Now I'm so pleased to introduce Keith Granet.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our next session of the Work of Design. You know, it felt really important, especially with the time of year and what we're going through and the economy, just to sort of talk about where we stand from a business standpoint in the design profession. You know, we are privileged to be in a profession that people want to be a part of. I think that we've never seen before so much action in home design. And mostly it's, you know, I guess we could all look at the pandemic as being sort of the reason for it. And you probably have heard me say this before, but we are a COVID positive industry. And what I mean by that is that people are at home more than they've ever been and they're paying attention to it. So whether they need a new pillow or building a new house, home has become the major, you know, place for people and where they live and where they want their day, what their day needs to feel like. And so we're seeing a tremendous increase in just volume of designers coming on the market, people hiring, clients wanting more and more of our goods and services. And so it's actually a really exciting time, but it's also a time when people get nervous because prices are on the rise. You know, we're seeing people in all kinds of communication about the economy. And we just wanted to sort of put this out there because we have a lot of data that we want to share with you and be able to talk to you about to help you run your businesses better. And to not sort of panic when you feel like things are tightening up or things are overloading. We want to really just talk to you about how to run a better business. And so that's what this is really about today. You know, I think that we learned recently that home design has exceeded fashion design in purchasing. And that's a pretty phenomenal situation to be in because you buy sort of one sofa, you know, in probably 10 years. And yet you can buy 200 shirts in the same period of time. So we don't have really a disposable business, let's hope, but we do have a business that is gaining tremendous attention. And so this really is about how to help you run your firm better. So I'm going to go through a number of different things that we've experienced and we've been exposed to through the years. I've spent the last 30 years helping design firms run their businesses better. And, you know, with Studio Designer, we you know, our motto really is to empower creativity, because if you have good systems in place, then you get to design more. You get to do what you do best. And that's what's most important to us. So here are just some of the things that we think are impacting our world right now. So we have down here a limited talent pool. And it's not that the talent is limited, it's the amount of people available to work because we've had such a great demand. And I know, and I'll show you in a slide as we're coming, where people are looking to find talent. Most of the time, the success comes from word of mouth, but also, you know, there are all those different sites that you could look for, whether, you know, it's LinkedIn or, you know, ZipRecruiter. Any of those sites are helpful, but you really want to make sure that you're hiring the right people who really belong in your organization. And so it's really important to do that. What we've noticed, and you know, they've called this year the Great Resignation, is the belief that the work from home situation has actually pulled us away from each other, that we're not as much of a community as we were because we've been so isolated. And when you're working from home, you just don't have that serendipity that happens when you're sitting next to somebody drawing or talking about something. And that issue has related, people are not connecting with each other as much. Now, many of us have gone back to work, and many of us, our offices are thriving. But there is a hybrid there, and we're going to talk about what that looks like in a second. And so the limited talent pool just makes it tougher to do your job when you can't find the right people to do it and to help support your organization. There's been, as I said, a high demand for services. People are wanting more and more access to your talents to help them live a better life because they're spending so much time at home. And that being said, I just want to remind you that the most important thing you can do is picking your clients. And sometimes when we get into a time where the economy feels a little iffy, we tend to just want to say yes, because we don't know where that next project's coming from. I'm here to tell you that saying yes to everything is not the way you should operate your business. And we all know this if we go back to 2008 when the economy crashed and people were saying yes to anything that was coming their way. And we would constantly refer to them as the 08 or 09 clients because they were the worst clients. They took advantage of the ability to ask for greater discounts, and they were just not the best clients. So making sure that you pick the right clients and learn how to say no when your gut tells you that's not the right client for you. There's resource limitations, like good luck finding a contractor now, or finding a tree, or getting your vendors to respond to you. They're so busy and so overloaded that we have resource limitations, and the best way to sort of counteract that is how you treat and how you build a community around your resources. If you have a contractor you constantly work with, or you are one of the vendor's best customers because you pay your bills on time, you're going to get their attention. They're going to be there for you. And when you're giving somebody or being difficult with somebody, they're going to tend not to be as responsive because they have plenty of work. So it's building those relationships that's actually going to make the resources less limiting because they'll be there for you. Now, we all know the supply chain has been a really tough thing. I personally ordered dining room chairs that are not going to be here for another 32 weeks. I think I could build them myself, but clearly I can't. And it seems crazy that it's that way, but there's such a backlog of work that needs to be done and product out there that we are just waiting. It's like companies like First Dibs are doing well because the product is available. And when you have manufacturers that just can't keep up with the demand, our supply chain chokes. And it also chokes because, during COVID, they had to shut down their factories. So the catch up is pretty significant. But every day it seems to be getting a little better. People ask me all the time what the effect of the interest rates increasing are to our business. And I have to say that majority of your clients are probably privileged enough to not take out mortgages, and that they are not borrowing as much money, and that they truly have the resources. And it hasn't affected our business the way it has affected other businesses. Home sales may be, being reduced because people don't want to pay those high rates. And we're seeing prices come down a little bit, but not significant, certainly not in California. But I do think we've seen a slowdown in people's willingness to buy. But what does that mean? It means their willingness to then invest in their own homes and what they have and to improve them. And so that's, I think, where you're going to see a lot of new business in the next year until those rates start dropping again. There are increased costs all around us, right? So, everybody feels they can charge a little more because the demand is so great. And things are costing more because gasoline prices are high and it takes a lot to ship something. All of those things are coming up, and hopefully you're paying attention as well to your services to understand how to accommodate that. If you're paying more to support your teams, to pay in salaries and in benefits, then you're going to have to charge more. And if everyone is charging more, then it becomes more of a norm. I'm not saying that just increase your rates to increase your rates, but they do have to tie into your expenses and your costs. Oftentimes I have clients say to me, can I raise my rates? I just don't think my clients will put up with it. And I haven't raised them in 4 or 5 years. Well, the truth is you've probably given salary increases and you've probably paid a lot more in health benefits and rent and all of your overhead. And so if you don't increase your rates, you're just depleting your margin. And that's not a good way to run your business. You need to constantly look at and make sure your rates follow what your expenses are. So let's just talk for a second about growing new business and improving your current business and how you can improve your profitability. So the first thing we have here is networking drives business. It's like finding your tribe. It's understanding who are these people that I'm connected to, who can bring me business. I've been a big advocate of designers working with designers and architects working with other architects and sharing. There's plenty of work out there. But when you find the group of people that connect, they support you. We have clients that have gotten work from vendors, contractors, real estate agents, their bank, people who once they know about you, and if there's a certain pride in you talking about your work and communicating that network that you build for yourself is going to be vitally important in growing your business. And sometimes it's completely okay to tell somebody, there's like a window here where we're slower than we've normally been, and we can take on some work, because most people will assume that you're busy and they don't think to do it. Even your old clients may think that, oh, they've got plenty of work, I don't need to refer them. But asking is not such a bad thing. Saying that you could use another job, or this is a great time for me to take on, 2 more projects, let people know. And once that word gets spread and you put it out in the world, it tends to come back to you. So make sure that when you're networking, you really are, focusing on the people who you think can bring you the most work and the people who want to support you. It's also a two-way street. It's like when your peers tell you they need work, and if it's a project that you think is more appropriate for them, tell them about it. Share with them. I think my clients that share each other's ability to pass jobs along have thriving practices because of it. So it's okay to recommend people, even if you think they're your competition, because it'll come back to you. So find your network, find your tribe, figure out how you're going to work with them and what you can do for each other, and make sure that it's a two-way street. One of the things I say often to interior designers is that if you have a project coming your way and a client needs you to help them find an architect, go find somebody that you really want to work with. Not necessarily the person that you've always worked with, but somebody who will take you in a new direction or stretch you. And then bring that project to them. I can guarantee you they will bring you work as well. So find ways of sharing what's the projects you have and the clients you have, and I can guarantee it'll come back to you. The next item is really improving business practices. And I think about this often because, in our industry, and we haven't gone through a recession in a long time, the key to any good business is to be nimble. And what I mean by that is that you want to be able to move on a dime if things turn south. If you feel like you're overpopulated with your staff's too heavy, you don't have enough work to support them, you just can't hang on for the purpose of hanging on. Now, if it's a temporary or a month or two where things are just not going well, and you have great people, of course you don't want to lose them. I always say hire first for your good people, the work will follow. It's a lesson I learned from Art Gensler many years ago. And so find good people and you'll find the work. But think about your business practices. Don't think about it as we can just live with the status quo and we'll get through this. Really figure out how to fine-tune the information you're getting. Make sure that you're looking at financial reports. Make sure that you are on top of your financial position. Make sure your clients are paying you. Do all of the things that keep you abreast as to how the business is running. And also, don't be scared. The worst thing you can do is feel fear that you're losing work or that you need to, shrink, or your staff seems too heavy. Because if you communicate and people feel that fear, it comes across, and you'll be less likely to get jobs. You may lose some staff. Fear is a weakness. You can make yourself vulnerable. It's a strength. It allows for good things to happen. But fear is definitely a weakness, so stay away from it. Do not think that just because you didn't get that job, it's the last job that'll come in the door. If you focus on great clients, they will lead to other great clients. The worst thing you can do is keep on going back to the same well of clients that do not move you forward. So one of the things that I tell people is make a list. Make a list of what makes a great client. Do they have the proper budget? Are they going to hire the right team to do a project that you'll be proud of? They can let you publish it. Does it push you in the right direction? Is it stretching you? Is it a game changer for your company? Make a list of what those things, those are just a few examples, but make a list of what those things are. And then if a client doesn't match anything on that list, you've got to say no. And if there are 3 or 4 things on there, but they're important things, it's okay. They don't all have to be perfect. But truly, you have to learn how to say no when they don't meet the criteria of what a great client is. The last thing on this slide I'd like to talk about is increasing profitability. When you feel vulnerable or you feel like the practice could get stronger, it's important that you build some kind of a war chest of just reserves. And for many of you who have read my books and have heard me speak, I have this thing about the 10% rule. So for every dollar that comes in from a client, if you just took 10% of it and put it in a savings account and managed around it, you would find at the end of the year that you could have a significant amount of money that will help you through some difficult times. So for instance, if a client's invoice comes in for $10,000, if you can manage around $9,000 and put that $1,000 away, by the end of the year, that number could be $100,000, and it could pay your taxes. It could just be a cushion. It could be an investment for something you want to do. So looking at your profitability, understanding what it takes to run your business and make sure you're profitable. We have a rule of thumb that for every dollar you pay somebody, you should be earning 3 to 3.5 times that. So let me repeat that. So for every dollar I pay somebody, so someone's salary is $50,000 a year and I'm paying them $25 an hour, the minimum I should be charging is probably $90 an hour for that person. That covers your overhead. That covers a bad client. That covers the ability to give bonuses and to have a profit. And nobody objects to you being profitable. Look at your numbers. Make sure you're looking at them every month and understand how you did. If you wait till the end of the year or wait till the end of a quarter to look at your numbers, the chances of things going south and not being able to correct will be very difficult. Where if you're looking at it every month and you see it's sort of a trend starting to happen with your profitability, you can make some corrective courses to help it work, to help build back that profitability and to change some of the things about how you run your business. So, people ask me all the time, how do you retain good people and how do you attract them? And if the work is good, most people, money always helps, right? So if you can pay well, and this These are some statistics that are in this industry report I'm going to talk about in a minute. But, firms that give raises retain people because they review them, they make sure that people, are happy, that they're working on projects they want to work on, and the ability to increase their salaries as cost of livings have gone up. I mean, I'm sure that most of you have felt this. We certainly have, that the demands for salary increases have been higher and higher just because cost of living has gotten so high. Firms of a larger size have more resources. They can pay more. So how do you, as a smaller firm, attract the same kind of talent? Well, it comes down to most people want to work for smaller firms because they're getting opportunity. They're getting to do more than just drafting or expediting or going to the PDC and picking up fabric. They're really getting to see all aspects of a project. And that's why people tend to go to smaller firms, because their exposure to the entire business is far greater. Now, that doesn't say there's not advantages to working at large firms. The projects tend to be bigger. You have more of a community to draw on, more people to learn from. And a very robust office is an exciting place to be. What I realize about, and we talked about this just briefly, the reason why during the pandemic we've seen this sort of great layoff is I don't feel that people are connected the way they used to be because they're spending a lot of time at home. And during the pandemic, we learned two things. We learned the two things that are almost impossible to do remotely or through Zoom is to mentor a junior person for them to really understand what it is to do their job, and also to design. We need to be in a room together. You can't design over a camera. Now, technology is getting great, and we're doing lots of things to make it more accessible for analog to feel more digital and digital to feel more analog. But it's still the ability for people to have what I call that serendipity, where you're sitting at a conference room table or a drafting board and you're just doodling with somebody and it's like, I have an idea. That kind of thing that happens can't be replaced on Zoom. It's too sort of uniformed and tight, and it just doesn't allow for that kind of action to take place. So I encourage you to, make sure that when it comes to mentoring people and designing, you create an environment where you can do that. It's the other way to attract talent is give opportunity. Make sure that they feel like you're building a learning and growing environment. I oftentimes get asked, how do I create a mentorship program? How do I do something so that I feel like people feel like they're getting the most out of me? And the truth is that mentorship should be a way of thinking, and that you don't really need a program because it becomes forced. You should always think, am I learning? Am I growing? Am I teaching? Am I always in an environment where someone feels like they're learning? Because when they do that, they feel like you can understand and people feel like there's a place to grow. It's a place I want to stay. And allowing people to feel like they matter and that they're contributing and that they're learning from you is what attracts people and retains people. I have to say that in all of the workshops I've done through the years, every time I talk about anything, whether it's marketing or ownership transition or project management, as soon as I bring up the word fees and payments and communication, it's the number one thing people want to talk about. Designers want to know how other people are charging, what billing rates people have, how they charge, how much they're paying people, what are the benefits they're giving. By the way, all of that data is in this survey that we did that I really encourage you to just grab hold of, because data is so important if you know how to use it. There are a lot of people who charge hourly because they feel like they can never get hurt. my comment on hourly, and I'm not against it, but I want you to be aware of the fact that when you charge hourly, if it took you 20 years to come up with a brilliant design, and the next time you use it on a project, it took you 10 minutes to put it down and document it, is it only worth 10 minutes? You're not getting paid for your value. There are a lot of barometers out there that we use. We use percentage of construction, cost per square foot, flat rates. The one thing that I will encourage you never to use is hourly not to exceed, because I call it hourly not to succeed. And the reason for that is if you don't spend the money, you leave it on the table. And if you go over, you can't bill it. So it's a lose-lose for you. And the thing to do then is simply to, if a client says, I don't want you to exceed X, then say, fine, let's make that your flat fee. We will work against that number. And then if you're efficient, you have the opportunity of making money and you're not leaving anything on the table. But going back to communicating your value, a client needs to feel like, one, the first thing is that you understand what their needs are and how you're going to address it, that you're hearing them, you're listening to what their needs are, and that you're not just formulaic. You're not just going to give them everything you've always done in the past. Now, if you're a firm that does have a formulaic process or a look, there are many designers that you can pinpoint their look from a mile away, and people come to them for that. That's a different scenario than the client that comes to you because they want you, because of your skills, to design their home, not your home, their home. And you're leaving them with something that's theirs. So being able to communicate with them what it is that they want and then regurgitating that back is the first thing you need to do. You need to be able to listen, understand what their needs are, understand how you're going to deliver it and what your value is. And then you get to talk about, here's my portfolio. This project looks like something that would appeal to you. If you go in with your portfolio and just start showing your work, you have no idea what the client wants. So you're just guessing that you're going to show them a project that's going to attract them. And you don't want to do that. What you want to do is make sure that you understand what the client needs first. So it's inquiry into who the client is, what their needs are, and then you get to advocate for your work and what you do. And the other thing I find often is a client says, I love your work, my budget is X. And the ability to say, what you love about our work costs Y. And here is how this works. It costs us the types of materials we use. The reason you love our work is because we go the extra mile. That costs money. If you tell me your budget is X and you know what you want is Y, we're never going to get there. So convincing a client that what they see in your work is what they want and that they're going to have to pay for it. So I want to talk a little bit about the culture of work from home. And I think if we didn't have a pandemic, we would still be here. That eventually we'd get to a place where people need more flexibility. Our lives are more complicated. Commute is more difficult. The ability for people just to have flexibility. But what does that mean? I mean, you just can't, it can't be a free-for-all. It certainly came to light during the pandemic that those who were really strong employees were equally as strong working from home because you could count on them, you could trust them. They weren't turning off their camera and watching Netflix. They were actually doing the work. And so I do think offering flexibility is important. What I think is even more important is creating some ground rules around it. So one of my clients put in a policy that if there's a client meeting, we expect you to be in. If if in fact there is some reason that we need to work on something that can't be done over Zoom, we will do that together, and you need to be in the office. If there's a lot of work to do that needs quiet time, fine, stay at home. Our expectations are that you'll work X amount of hours a day, and you're going to abide by that. And if you fail on those expectations, then there's a possibility that we'll take it away. I think that you need to have a hybrid solution where you're working, there's some work from home and there's work in the office, because one or the other doesn't seem to be working because people have too many options now. So when you're telling people to work from home, it's just important that you communicate with them. You understand what their goals are, what they want to accomplish. You check in with them on a regular basis, and it doesn't become a free-for-all. And what hybrid tends to look like today is the majority of the firms are working 3 to 4 days a week in the office, and they're giving a flex day, whether it's a Friday or a Monday. And the firms that are doing 3 days in the office tend to want to do Monday and Friday. I personally disagree with that philosophy because it gives people a 4-day weekend. So even though they say they're working from home, they probably have traveled somewhere for the 4 days. And I think a better solution is for people to come in the office on Monday, work from home on Tuesday, come in the office Wednesday and Thursday, and work from home on Friday. It gives enough sort of cadence to the need to work from home and the lack of commuting. And yet it keeps the work week sort of solid and people respecting your time, the time together. But the other thing is, how do you make sure everyone's communicating and that the culture that you want for your office still exists? It's not an easy thing to do, to maintain a culture while you're not physically together in an office. And we at Studio do things like, we do have monthly, and we have people all over the country. So our employees are not just here in LA, but we have monthly staff meetings, and everyone's camera needs to be on so that we know that they're around. And then on holidays, we've done everything from sending barbecues for 4th of July for people to just have an experience together, or done a virtual escape room online, finding activities that keep people connected and they understand how much you care about them. It's a sort of crazy world right now, and we're all just trying to figure this out. But this work from home culture it can work. It just needs to be managed. And you have to have people who agree to what your expectations are and ask them to. Some people ask for them to sign an agreement. And if they violate that agreement or they don't abide by, the rules of it, then it gets taken away. You hope never to get to that point, but like any rule is always made for the person who wants to break it. So it's important that you communicate well and you get buy-in for whatever situation that you want to create in this hybrid world. So I wanted just to talk a little bit about this industry report with you, because again, as the data here at Studio, we have almost 13,000 users. We have over 4,500 unique firms that use our software. So we collect a lot of that data, and we would never, ever distribute that data specifically, but collectively, it's very powerful because it gives you the ability to see what's going on in the world. We know where people are spending more. We know, what people's fees are. We know what their markup is. And again, we will never distribute that in a way that will expose anybody to their unique situation. But collectively, we just look at, how many employees does it take before someone reaches a certain profit margin? Or what are the services that people are offering? We have a hybrid of, there's a lot of our clients that are both architects and interior designers. and they have a hybrid office where they do both. And sometimes you have, an architectural firm that has a very small interiors practice, or a very large interiors firm that has a small architectural practice. We look at all of that to help determine some of this data. Where does the profitability lie? Is it lower when you're smaller, or is it higher, when you have a large firm? So all of this data was pulled together for us to communicate to you what's the average billing rate for your region? What's the average benefits that people are giving? How much time off do you give people? When you have that data, it's easy to go back to your employees and basically, say, look, I know what the industry is. Your friends may tell you Y or X, but I'm telling you, we have this data for what the industry is doing, and it's a great tool. And you may find that you are underpaying people and you need to raise their salaries. It is more expensive to go find a new employee and train them than it ever is to just simply ignore their needs. And so giving them a raise is going to be far more effective than ever the need to replace them. And so hopefully some of this data helps you make good decisions in running your business. I would like to now open this up to Q&A, and Lauren, I assume we have some questions out there.
We do.
But that'd be great to hear what they are.
Yeah, sure. I have a question from Dawn. She's asking, can you repeat the information on what we pay someone, X amount, and what we charge, or what I should be paying myself?
I think the information I put out there was just the multiple of what you pay somebody versus what you charge, which is somewhere between 3 and 3.5 times. So again, if someone's earning, I'm just making up these numbers, $50,000, you're typically making around $25 an hour. You want to bill them out at probably close to 90 in order to cover all your expenses and your profit.
I have a question from Katie. She's asking, I'm a really small firm and I feel like some of my clients want someone with a bigger team. How do I communicate that my small firm is the right one for the job?
That's a great question. It's all about trust and understanding, and maybe somebody like that who's willing to give you a chance. Having a small firm wants you to sort of walk before you run, and maybe it's doing one room at a time, or I'm not a big fan of that, by the way, but because you want people to commit to an entire project, but it may be a way for them to understand what your skill sets and your capability. The other thing is, I'm sure you have clients that would definitely give you testimonials of how much they enjoyed working with you and how efficient you are. So being able to communicate what you're capable of. Now, if it is a very large project and it really is stretching you, maybe consider partnering with somebody and doing the job. There's a lot of firms that have done that in the past, where there may be a local representative firm and you're remote, and therefore together you're working on the project. It gets a little tricky. You have to decide who the lead designer is going to be on something like that. But finding a way to sort of co-partner with somebody, if it's a very large project and you think it's too big, might be an answer. But really, if you can communicate your skills and your talents and they can trust that, then I think most clients are willing to give it a chance.
Great. I have a question from Luke. He's asking, he actually does bookkeeping for designers and wants to give the best advice to his clients. How do you manage a surge of new clients, all while tending to your existing clients in a way that serves them both equally, all while looking to grow?
Actually, Lauren, repeat the question, because there's a lot there.
He wants to know, how do you manage a surge of new clients while tending to your existing clients in a way that serves them all equally while looking to grow?
It's another great question. I think that you have to be careful how much work you take on and when to say no. And I know it's always impossible to say no, because you think that it's a great opportunity to grow into something. But you don't want to disappoint. So if you overload yourself, you're going to burn out your staff, and potentially make your clients unhappy, and that ultimately will not lead to growth. So finding a way to gradually grow and stretch yourself to do a few new projects. We all know that existing clients, as much as we love them, they can be a pain in the neck because they never want to go away. It's like, can you go buy me a pillow? Can you replace a rug? And you have to take care of them because that's your repeat business. But it also, it eats up a lot of time. So making sure that you can accommodate enough new clients to help grow your business, take care of your old clients without really, hurting yourself or pushing yourself too far. So just pace yourself, I guess, is the best way I would say to manage that.
Thanks, Keith. Our next question is from Denise. She's saying, we are a small firm that makes most of our profit on the products sold. We have fairly high markups to make it happen. Would we be better off lowering the cost of goods and setting flat fees?
Most people try to cover their costs through their billing, meaning, and what I mean by billing, their hourly or their fees, and that the markup on furniture or product tends to be their profit. I think there's always room for both. I think as long as you're within, standard, we always say that somewhere between 30 and 35% is the typical markup on product. And if you're a lot higher than that, then it's probably because your fees are lower and you can run a profitable business that way. If you are higher than the 30 or 35 and your billing rates are high, I think at some point you're going to limit the people's ability to hire you because that's above the norm. I think that it's interesting, throughout the country, we see very different ways of people billing, which means that we typically hear that like Boston, Chicago, San Francisco bill hourly, and then they mark up a percentage on product. New York and LA, Atlanta, I think Dallas are cities where people tend to have either a fixed fee, a lump sum, or a design fee, and then everything is a part of the markup. So it's interesting how other cities just sort of accept it, and they all sort of follow suit. But I would say that find out what it is in your region and how people are charging, and try to follow suit. And I think your billing rates should align with your talent. And if you're more expensive because you have that much greater skill and talent, then you deserve it, and you should be able to communicate that.
Thank you, Keith. Our next question is from Dane. He's saying, hi, Keith, thanks for presenting. In terms of mentorships, do you think it's worth it to work with a larger firm in a fellowship capacity for a certain amount of time to learn and grow from the experience? If so, how long do you recommend? 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, and what could that program look like?
So thank you, Dane, for that question. I have always been of the belief that as soon as you get out of school, you shouldn't go and hang out your shingle and start a firm. There are a lot more people who have learned a lot of lessons in how to run a design firm through the years, and why not learn from them? Why not be a sponge and figure out how a larger firm communicates and charges and documents their work and markets it? I think that that's vitally important. How long? We live in a different world today where people tend to jump around a little bit more and don't feel like experience is important. And I have to tell you that experience is the most important thing that you can offer. The more you get to work on a project, the more projects you build, the better you're going to be at your job. So 2 years is not a long time. I would say you should hang out at a firm for 2 years and really learn everything. Now, look, if it's the wrong firm for you and you don't feel like you're learning, then that's a different story. But if it's a firm that you can learn and grow from, I think 2 years is more than appropriate.
Fantastic, Keith. Della's asking, what are the standard markup fees?
Well, I sort of said 30 to 35% is pretty typical. Now, it also can change if you're doing specialty things like art or specialty consultants, painters or artisans of any kind, then those numbers tend to lower because the dollar volume is higher. We typically say, like, if people are buying antiques, we'll say, you could probably lower that to 20% for any single item more than $50,000. But the work to put it all together, to expedite it, is not that different just because it's an expensive piece than it is, buying a rug somewhere or buying, a chair. There's a lot of work in documenting. And so I don't believe you should fluctuate your rates. You should agree to something and stick to it. And also, don't give clients a discount that ask you, like, oh, I hear, so-and-so does it for 25%. Can you match that? It's not fair to your other clients. They have agreed to your rate. And it's okay to say to the client, we charge this amount because we know what it takes to do the work. And if I give you a discount, how is that fair to all the people who are paying the full rate? So really stick to your guns when it comes to that. But again, I think you could have sort of a schedule of things that are going to be at a different rate. So if most of your products are at 30 or 35% and you do antiques at 20 and you do artwork at, say, 20 or 15, you have to decide what that markup represents. Does it represent the amount of work you're doing, or is it just an easy purchase and therefore it should be less? But there's quite a bit of data on how people should charge for those things.
Thanks, Keith. We have several questions, but I know we only have time for a few more. Linda, I'm going to condense her. She has two long questions. She wants to know, she's a small firm and she's looking to pivot, switch gears and focus on more small commercial projects, which take far less client management than residential. Do you have advice on how to pivot?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, when you take on a lot of small residential projects, it leads to other small residential projects because those clients tend to know each other, recommend you, and you don't get out of that sort of rut of the same client doing the same kind of project. And it's really to try to push yourself, try to find a client that takes you to that next level, and eventually you'll get there. But it's really going out, marketing yourself, and maybe finding the local real estate people or the local contractors or architects that you can work with that are going to give you an opportunity to work on a bigger project. But when you're sort of picking and choosing the same project over and over again, it is a rut. It's you're on a treadmill and you're not going to get off until you make a decision to go after a bigger project.
Great. I have a question from Jamie. Keith, how do you feel about raising hourly rate and markup in the new year?
Go for it. My guess is you're probably giving salary increases, at the end of the year or the new year. And, it doesn't always have to be at the beginning of the year, but people are we're all used to seeing, oh, my rates have increased, and it usually happens at the beginning of the year. I think it's all about communicating and how you communicate your clients and say, and it should be in your contract that you have the ability to raise your rates annually. Everything increases, so your rates should increase. Now, if you have a fixed fee or a flat rate, that's not going to make a difference. But for your hourly rates, you need to make sure that you have the ability. Now, not everybody does it because they may feel like they're fine and the client is fine. But it's really important that you make sure it's in your contract and that you follow through with it. Because I've had clients say, I haven't raised these rates in 5 years. They're going to kill me when they see my new rates. You don't want that. You want to have a gradual sort of increase in your rates so the clients, they're palpable for clients.
Great. I think we have time for one or two final questions. Rashida's asking, do you know another way to get a mentor or intern if you need to work full time? My issue is that I work full-time and I would love a mentorship in some capacity.
So I guess if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's if I'm working full-time, but I want to work for a firm or be mentored by somebody, that's a tough one because you can't, it's kind of hard to have a full-time job and then ask for someone to sort of support you and mentor you through something. But yes, there are some organizations that allow for, to have like a once a month, pick somebody and say, I love your work and would you be up for mentoring me? And some people are up for that. Just approach them and say, I just want to learn this industry. And would it be possible for us just to, I need an hour a month. Or, maybe you take a pause and you do an internship at a firm just to learn it. But it's a tricky one. I think you just need to find, if you have a connection to somebody, ask them how much they're willing to give you. And if, what can you do for them? So if they're going to mentor you, can you come in the office and straighten up their library or whatever it has to be? Just it's a give and take. And so if you can find someone to mentor you, I think that would be great.
Okay, one final question from Sarah. What do you do with clients shopping and finding trade products online and they don't want to buy through you?
That's the age-old question. I did an interview with Bunny Williams that's on YouTube, and she says even when a client has her go to Bergdorf's to buy decorative accessories, she charges her full markup on the full retail price because it's just as much work to go find that, pick it out, and it's her taste thereafter. But when you have clients that are shopping on their own, those are terrible clients. One, they're not good at scale. They're not good at making sure that it's cohesive with your designs. And, they're asking you to do a whole lot of work to incorporate those things into your project. And I guarantee you the project's not going to be as good. So I would tell clients that, you're fine to do that, but, if you need me to incorporate this in your project, we're going to charge you a fee for that.
Great, I think that's all the questions we have time to answer today.
Well, thanks, Lauren, for your help. And thank you all for, being here and listening to this and being a part of it. Our goal is really to help you run your businesses better, to strengthen it wherever we possibly can help. And we appreciate your support. Being a studio user is, important to us, and we want to be here to support you. So the more of these types of things we can do, the more we're happy to do them. And we'd love to hear from you. If, email us, let us know that there's more you'd like to hear or understand, and we'll do more of these. So thank you all and have a great holiday season. And don't forget, this fee and salary report really has important data in it. Everyone should have one. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Keith, and thank you everyone for joining us today.